I will now call this meeting to order. Today is April 30th, 2024. Rules of decorum shall be strictly observed during the hearing, and copies of these rules can be found in the back of the room. Pete, do we have any deletions or changes to the agenda today?
There are no additions or deletions to the agenda this morning.
Thank you. We do have one presentation today. Courtney Sievers with Magellan Strategies is here to present. She'll present the results of April 20th, April 2024, we were able to get a survey done with them, and it's regarding the Dolores Canyon National Monument opinion survey of residents in Mesa, Montrose, and San Miguel counties. So thank you, Courtney, for being here today with us to present.
Yes, good morning, commissioners. My name is Courtney Sievers. Let me share my screen quickly. Can you guys see that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yes, as the commissioners mentioned, my name is Courtney Sievers. I work with Magellan Strategies. We are a survey research company out of Louisville, Colorado, just north of Denver. This survey was conducted on April 24th among residents, as the commissioner mentioned, in Montrose, Mesa, and San Miguel counties. Let me get into the methodology. So this survey was results of 1,272 residents within those three counties. The interviews were conducted on April 24th, last week. This text message that's over here on the left, that's part of our methodology, and let me kind of dive deeper into that. So we have a statewide voter file in-house here at Magellan that we use as sample for our surveys. We have then send text messages to residents within the county, within the three counties for this survey, in which they invites them to participate in an online survey to take this survey through an online platform that they can participate in. So the picture there on the left is an example of that text message, and then it has a link in it as well for them to click. Now, I do want to mention, as you may know, this survey did get passed around among the public last Thursday after it was released. We sent out approximately 78,000 text messages to residents in those three counties, of which 60,500, just under that, were Mesa County residents. Those started going out at about 12:45 on Thursday the 24th. And then at about 5 o'clock that day, it actually got passed around. And this is something that happens on a topic such as this that's a little bit more active, a little bit more in the public eye of what's going on. And so that happens, unfortunately, with these online links. Stuff can get passed around very quickly. However, we have ways to kind of quality control this. And what I mean by that is, we know our text messages went out at about 12:45 that day. And like I mentioned, we had about 78,000, 60,000 were of Mesa County voters. We know from social media, we know from help with staff, that really got passed around at about 5 o'clock that afternoon. I also am able to look at the data, and we have timestamps on when somebody opened that survey. And you can see a spike right there at about 5 o'clock, 5:02 to be specific, when that text message really got spread around the county. And so therefore, even though we had 1,951 people complete the survey, we were looking at that and diving deeper into the data. And with that link being passed around, we, like I said, want to do that quality control. Once we dive deeper into the data, we knew that 217 people tried to take the survey multiple times, which we do have ways of stopping that from happening. Of those, and then another, 462 people completed the survey in Mesa County after that 5:02 period. And so looking through the data and cleaning that data up to making sure that they're valid interviews, valid complete interviews, and knowing and making sure that they're from our text message that was sent to voters and not those that were passed around, we concluded that 1,272 interviews were valid and that we could move forward with. And so that's what this survey results really go through, is these 1,272 interviews that were completed in Mesa, Montrose, and San Miguel counties that day on the 24th. That gives us a margin of error of 2.74% at the 95% confidence interval. And those population subgroups are going to have a higher margin of error than that overall sample. And then this data was weighted to be representative of the registration demographics for the 3-county region. And what I mean by that is, I know this is a little small probably for you all to see, but these are the registration and past turnout demographics for the 3 counties combined. So a couple things that I want to point out on this slide. One is just the breakout of counties. So we know that most of that population is Mesa County. 76% of the overall population is Mesa County, with 20% coming from Montrose and then just 4% coming from San Miguel. The other thing I really want to point out here is party affiliation. Unaffiliated voters make up about 48% of registration in that 3-county break. Excuse me, Republicans make up 36% and Democrats make up 14%. That is really similar to the Mesa County numbers, just due to the fact that Mesa County makes up about 76% of that population. However, when you look at Montrose, Montrose is more evenly split on that party break, with unaffiliated voters making up 46% and Republicans making up 40%. And then San Miguel is actually a little bit more flip-flopped, with 50% unaffiliated, 35% Democrat, and 12% Republican. So I just want you to keep that in mind as we go through these survey results, so that you have an idea when it's broken out by county, just what that looks like. So let's jump into the results. The first question was, from the following options, who do you believe should manage and conserve public lands and open space? 36% of respondents said county government, 21% said state government, 20% said federal government, and just under a quarter said other. And we did have an open text message verbatim response for that other answer, excuse me. And among those responses, a lot of people mentioned the people should be the ones that are managing those, followed by kind of a combination of all three and working those together. Some people mentioned BLM, some people mentioned the Department of Wildlife, but the majority of those other responses were the people. And then as you break it out by subgroups here on the right, which we'll do for every question, there's no big differences on this question between women and men and the age break. You really see the differences there between party affiliation, as well as if a respondent, excuse me, has a 4-year degree or does not have a college degree, as well as those county breaks, which, as I mentioned, those party lines within the county breaks are really where that's coming from. So nearly half, 47% of Republicans believe the county government should be the ones managing that, where a third of unaffiliated voters believe the county government. And then that flip-flops for the Democrat side. So just over a third, 34% believe the federal government, and 3 out of 10 saying the state government. That 4-year degree lies more in line with the Democrat kind of party line, with 23% saying county government and 31% saying federal. And then that flip-flops with 42% saying county government among those that do not have a degree, versus 15% for the federal government. But let's jump further into this. So this next question just asks a general support or oppose on conserving public lands. It doesn't mention anything about a national monument, doesn't mention anything really. I mean, it does say the Colorado National Monument and gives examples of those, but it doesn't say specifically about turning anything into a national monument or a national conservation area. It just says, do you generally support or oppose conserving public lands and open space in Colorado? And then list those examples. Among respondents, 72% support conserving public lands and open space, with a quarter of respondents saying that they oppose that. You can see here that the intensity, just over half, strongly support conserving public lands and open space. And then there's no real huge differences, with it all being over 50% support, even among Republicans. But you can see those differences among party line, slight difference there on degrees, as well as the county breaks. So then we ask a list of areas, whether it be national monuments, whether it be lakes or conservation areas, recreation areas. We ask a list of these just to determine where respondents are on if they use these areas, how many respondents really are using the Dolores River Canyon area, as well as other areas, just to get a feel of who these respondents are. Are they outdoorsy? Are they going to these areas? And so The one that I really want to point out is the one right there in the middle, the Dolores River Canyon area, with roughly 3% saying that they use it daily. However, 21% say that they never use it, and 79% total say that they use it at least once a year. And so that we just wanted to get a feel of how many people are actually really familiar with this area, how many people use it, and what they use it for. So of those 79% that use it at least once a year, we then ask them what they do, what activities do they or their family participate in while they're there. They were able to check all that apply, and so 71% of those respondents said hiking, 66% said camping, followed by fishing, off-road trails, river rafting / tubing, and then other. And among those other responses, majority of those were either hunting or mountain biking, followed by just some others of bird watching, and then just walking and driving through. So then we get into more about the proposal itself for a national monument. How much have you seen, read, or heard about a proposal to conserve the area known as the Dolores River Canyon area located in western Colorado? 72% have seen a lot or some information. 27% have not seen any information at all. And so that's important as we go through this to just kind of keep in the back of their mind that roughly just over a quarter of respondents have not seen any information about this proposal and what's going on with the Dolores River Canyon area. And there's really no huge differences among subgroup there on the right either. And then we asked how familiar they are with the proposal. And the reason we asked both of these questions is, one, to look at other previous surveys, and two, it's interesting to look at how much they've seen, read, or heard, and whether or not they feel like they're familiar with it, respondents themselves. So 61% believe that they're very or somewhat familiar with the proposal. Another 16% say they're not too familiar. And again, right at a quarter believe that they're not familiar at all. And this kind of shifts throughout these subgroups with Mesa, or excuse me, with Montrose County. You can see that blue and red sticking out there a little bit further, more very or somewhat familiar compared to Mesa and San Miguel. But really is no big, huge differences when you combine those very and somewhats together. So let's get into the support for the actual national monument proposal, excuse me. This is exactly how it was read to respondents. As you may know, currently the 390,000 acres of the Dolores River Canyon area are federally managed through the Bureau of Land Management and the United States Forest Service. Knowing this information, do you support or oppose the creation of a national monument on public land surrounding the Dolores River in the western portions of Mesa and Montrose counties and the northwest portion of San Miguel County? After reading that question, 37% support the proposal, 57% oppose, and 6% are unsure or no opinion. And again, this is what I call the uninformed opinion. So this is before they're given any information. This is just what they have seen or read or heard on their own knowledge and own familiarity. 37% support, 57% oppose. Of those 57% that oppose, 49% strongly oppose, almost half. So that's interesting that among those that oppose are very strongly committed to it, where that strongly support is more of a 2/3 split. You can see as we look through it by subgroup here on the right, there is a little bit more of a gender gap, 43% support versus 31% support of males. And then as we get older, 65 plus is almost evenly split, 48% support, 49% oppose. And then as you get into the party break, 22% of Republicans compared to 75% oppose. That unaffiliated is leaning more towards that kind of Republican conservative side with 40% support, 54% oppose. With Democrats, 71% support and a quarter of those Democrats opposing. And then you can see the gap there among those that have a 4-year degree versus those that do not. So 50% support, 42% oppose, compared to that of 32% support, 64% oppose. And then you can see the differences here. And again, these kind of line up with party lines from the county breakout, with 39% of Mesa County supporting the proposal and 55% opposing, compared to Montrose, which supports a little bit lower, and San Miguel, where support is over 60%. We then asked respondents why they support the proposal to create the national monument. It really comes down to a few things. One, conservation and preservation. They realize that the area's unique beauty and ecological significance, desire to preserve the landscape for future generations. Respondents believe that there will be economic benefits from tourism that's generated from a national monument designation. A trust in the federal government and a belief that that they will provide adequate protection and funding for conservation efforts. And then the fourth one there, opposition and development of extraction, talking about a desire to prevent and overuse inappropriate recreational activities, industrial development, also a concern about protecting the area from drilling, mining, and other industries. We asked why they why respondents oppose the proposal to create the national monument. And this really comes down to more of a local controlled government overreach tone. There's concerns about increased restrictions. Many express worries about additional regulations and limitations. Just a desire for local control, a strong sentiment for local management of the land rather than federal agencies. A fear of negative impacts on the ecosystem. Some express concerns of potential negative effects from increased tourism, such as littering, damage to the environment and ecosystem. And then the fourth one, just an opposition of government overreach. As I kind of mentioned, many respondents expressed general distrust of government involvement and a belief that the federal government should not have control over public lands. And just that overall kind of underlying tone of local control. So then we asked respondents, based on your knowledge and use of the area, do you believe there are resources within the Dolores River Canyon area that are not currently protected under the BLM's resource management plans or the U.S. Forest Service's forest plan? Among the respondents, 16% said yes, they do believe there are resources that are not protective. 38% said no, and just under half, 46%, said that they were unsure. Among those that said yes, we asked them to provide examples of the resources that they believe warrant additional protection. Majority of those were talking about the Dolores River and the wildlife habitat, followed by cultural and historical resources, landscapes and scenic views, water resources, recreational opportunities, mitigating human impact, and limiting commercial exploitation. We then asked a question based on just public land management and what they are able to do with restrictive protections versus least restrictive protections, such as just general management areas. What, on a scale of 1 to 10, do you believe the Dolores River Canyon should be managed? So a 1 being least restrictive, excuse me, and a 10 being most restrictive. On that scale, 1 being least restrictive, excuse me, 25%, a quarter believe that it should be a number 1, least restrictive, so similar to a national monument. 3% said 10, most restrictive. However, a third said 6 to 9. But if you look at that with 4 or less, you're looking at about 52%, compared to about 35% with 6 or higher. So that's one way of looking at it. You can look at just 1s and 10s, and kind of break this down however you please with kind of what you want to combine here. But however, you can see some differences here among both age, with 40% of seniors saying that 6 to 9, and another 3 saying a 10, most restrictive. Democrats, 63% said 6 to 9, with another 6 being most restrictive. And then San Miguel, again, 59%, 6 through 9, with a 4% most restrictive. On the other side, you can see Republicans are at that 35% least restrictive, actually 71% if you include 4 or less. Those with no degree are at 57% if you include 4 or less. And then Montrose County is at 64% if you include 4 or less. So there's a couple different ways of looking at this data, but it's interesting to break this down on restrictive, being least restrictive or most restrictive. Do you think the National Monument designation of the Dolores River Canyon area would enhance or restrict public access to the area? 55% of respondents said restrict, 25% said enhance, and 9% said no impact on access. And you can see this again kind of falls in line with what you would expect, with 71% of Republicans saying that they believe it would restrict access, compared to 55% of Democrats saying that it would enhance public access. And you can see those breaks among county as well, with Montrose having 68% restrict, and then about an even split on San Miguel, and 53% saying restrict among Mesa County. We then asked, do you trust the federal government to effectively manage and protect the proposed Dolores Canyons National Monument? 31% believe yes, 62% said no. And again, you can see that intensity there. 46% of that 62% said no, definitely not. This kind of, again, falls in line with party lines. No big differences really among age or gender. Those are pretty similar compared to party, of which 68% of Democrats said yes, they do trust the government. Unaffiliated voters, 35%, more on that conservative side, saying that they trust the government, and then 12% of Republicans saying they trust, compared to 85% saying no. Again, when looking at it by a college degree, whether you have a college degree or not, among those that do have a college degree, they're pretty evenly split, statistically tied, 49% yes, 45% no, compared to 68% of those that do not have a degree not trusting the federal government. And then there's the breakdowns there by county, with 60% of Mesa County respondents saying that they do not trust the federal government to manage this. Then we asked more on economy and job market. So do you think that the designation of the national monument would have a positive or negative impact on the local economy and job market? 45% said negative impact, 31% said positive impact, and 13% said no impact. Again, you can see this kind of breakdown there by party lines. Republicans, 65% believe it'll be a negative impact, and it kind of balances out with Democrats, 60% saying it'll be a positive impact, with unaffiliated voters being split right down the middle, 37% negative, 35% positive, with another 16% saying no impact. Again, there's some differences there by those that have a college degree. And then Mesa County, 42% said negative impact, 32% said positive impact, with 14% saying no impact at all. We then read 4 information questions just explaining what exactly the National Monument would do to the area, the designation, excuse me, of what the National Monument would do to the area and what that would look like. First of all, we gave them this map that is on the left side of the slide, in which shows what the designated area would look like, what that boundary is, those in the brown striped lines, and just ask them if they would support that or not, or excuse me, if they would move them in their support. We also mentioned the uranium mining within Montrose County and how currently uranium mining in the Dolores River Canyon area in the west end of Montrose County impacts the local economy by providing dollars and jobs. The current National Monument proposal would allow some, but not all, existing permit holders to continue to operate, but it has not been decided if the proposal would allow new permits or permit renewals in the future. We also asked these 2 questions based on water rights and how the current proposal does not impact water rights connected to McPhee Dam, which was built as a storage reservoir to irrigate a portion of southwestern Colorado. However, the proposal does prevent any new dams or mines in the proposed area. And then we talked about the bipartisan effort for the National Conservation Area. After years of community meetings and stakeholder negotiations, bipartisan bills have been introduced to create a national conservation area on approximately 68,000 acres of the Dolores River Canyon area, of Montrose, Dolores, and San Miguel counties. National conservation areas allow for public input compared to the National Monument, which is simply created by the president. So of those 4 information questions, we asked respondents, after reading those, are you more likely to support or oppose the proposal for the National Monument? None of these really had a huge movement aspect. Usually on information questions like this, if we're really trying to inform voters and educate, most likely this movement will be higher, would be in the 60% mark, where these are roughly right around the 50% mark minus that of uranium mining. However, 57% of respondents believe that the uranium mining, after reading that message, that they would be more likely to oppose the proposal for a national monument. 52% of respondents, after understanding the bipartisan effort for a national conservation area rather than the national monument, 52% would be more likely to oppose the national monument proposal. And then the map and the water rights are right there at 50% and under on that movement as well. So after reading those 4 messages and information questions, excuse me, and understanding what's really more in the details of a national monument versus, for example, a national conservation area, or leaving it how it is, we asked them again, would you support or oppose the proposal to create Dolores Canyons National Monument? And there really was no movement here. 37% still support it, which is what it was at the uninformed question. And 60% now oppose it compared to 57% at the beginning of the survey. So like I mentioned, there's really not a lot of movement here after being educated on those 4 topics. You can see that the intensity among respondents of those that say that they oppose, 51% say that they strongly oppose the proposal. But really, there's not a big, huge difference here among even subgroups of any movement after they were informed and educated on some of those aspects of the proposal to create a national monument. Then one final question that we asked them was just basically a definition of a national monument versus a national conservation area. And what do they think, what do voters and what do respondents think that the Dolores River Canyon area should prefer, or what do they prefer for the Dolores Canyon or River Canyon area to be? And so if they were to choose, which method of protection would you prefer for the Dolores River Canyon area? 45%, just under half, actually would like it to stay the same, a BLM public lands, Forest Service public lands kind of concept. 27% said a national conservation area, and just over 1 in 5 said a national monument. Again, that kind of falls within party lines, with 66% of Republicans saying that they believe it should remain the same, 21% saying a national monument, 10% saying a national conservation area. Among Democrats, it's a little bit more split, 18% saying remain the same, 32%, about a 1/3 saying a national monument, and 41% saying a national conservation area. And then among unaffiliated respondents, it really is pretty split. 37% remain the same, 31% national monument, and a quarter saying national. You know what? That's actually, my apologies. I just realized that slide is incorrect. The red should be national conservation area on the subgroups, and the green should be national monument. My apologies. I just realized that that is incorrect. I will get that fixed. That is backwards. That's why I'm confused. My apologies again. I will get that fixed. The red should actually be national conservation area, and the green is actually national monument. So it matches the graph there on the left. But that being said, the blue bars are correct as they remain the same. And you can see 43% of Mesa County respondents believe it should be the same. 56% of Montrose County residents believe it should stay the same. And even 19% of San Miguel respondents believe it should remain the same. And then survey demographics. So with that being said, I will open it up to any questions that the commissioners might have.
Thank you, Courtney. Commissioners, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Thank you, Courtney. I don't have any questions. I appreciate you going through all this.
Yeah. Thanks, Courtney. We appreciate it.
Yes, no problem.
Do you guys have any comments?
I guess as a form of comments, I was surprised how galvanized people are. Like the results up front were basically the results at the end. Once you educated, I thought that last slide was telling in that most people prefer some form of conservation, but more people, 70% plus, prefer something other than a national monument. So I think there's room to negotiate and move and have conversations around that. So
Yeah, I was surprised about that as well. And I kind of thought it was that it didn't change because a lot of people were already pretty well informed. And I think you could see that too with Montrose in particular. They seem very opposed, and I think they've spent a little more time educating their folks in their community. So good to know what the public thinks.
Yeah, that was really good. I thought the people who wanted more local control over our public lands was really fascinating. The number was really high to me.
I just would hope that would come with funding if we're going to take that on.
Yeah, the funding, that is the big elephant in the room. Well, thank you to Magellan Strategies for putting that together. And I wanted to make it clear that we were the ones that initiated the survey and funded it. And we are listening to our residents and really trying to build a table where thoughtful solutions can be found. I've personally been at numerous briefings with the monument and designation. We've talked to proponents and people who are in opposition. We've sat down with West End residents, Gateway, Nuclear, ranchers, miners, and lots of members of our community to discuss this monument designation. I also was able to attend the CMU listening session. I had a separate meeting with him, the senator, and was able to go over a lot of our concerns that the community had. And then I also attended the CMU listening session as well. So we're just really trying to take the time to listen to Mesa County residents, build a table and see what everybody's concerns are. We've developed a mapping tool on the Mesa County website that has different layers for our residents to look at what is protected currently, different layers as far as mining, wilderness areas, BLM, and U.S. Forest Service. And in those layers, you can make a comment about your concerns on each of those layers. And so we really want to make sure that our residents are as informed as possible. And then we will also make this survey available to our residents, the press, et cetera. So we just really appreciate the engagement. We appreciate Magellan Strategies for taking this on. And we look forward to digging in to find common ground solutions for all of our residents. And so thank you.